Good evening, everybody. Denver 7 breaking into your program. Shannon Ogden along with Jessica Porter. There has been a dramatic escalation in the protests in Denver tonight.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Fuck you and your mic. Excuse me, sir. Again, you get an example of what we're dealing with down here.
We want to go down to Sloan Dickey now. Sloan, we hear that you're okay. Tell us what's going on. Are you okay?
They are? Oh no.
No, okay, we're gonna cut right back out because
Throwing fireworks like that. All right, guys, we just got. We're running by. So we just got hit pretty bad. The eyes are really going.
Hey, we're live here at 14th and Broadway. What you're looking at is essentially escalating tensions between protesters and Denver police.
First we were in Colfax and in Pearl, around that area where we saw protesters bringing dumpsters onto the middle of the street.
Sloan, we're going to need you to get out of. We're going to need you to get out of there as quickly as possible. Head off to the east or head out of that way because we don't need you to be in the middle of that.
I'm going to interrupt you there, Jess. I'm sorry. Addie Guajardo, let's go very quickly to her live. Addie?
Shannon, I want you to take a look at some of the vandalism happening behind us. There is protesters breaking the windows. They have already spray painted them. Somebody was taking like a big piece of metal towards them. Now they're throwing rocks. We're keeping our distance right now. At least 3 windows completely broken.
We will not stand for this fucking.
Guys, you need to. I'm sorry.
Again, we want to apologize for any language you might be hearing.
Some tear gas.
All right, so we're gonna have them get right out of there.
Are you okay, Sloan?
We're gonna have Sloan move because obviously there's some tear gas being fired off. Let's pop it up to Air Tracker 7.
We could feel that gas being deployed, really burning in the eyes. Just tears just started going down my face.
All I can say is we put our hands up, made it very clear. As you can see, those police lights continue to come through the trees. We're trying to get out of the way, trying to be as respectful as possible behind that police line, yet we still have received pepper bullets and pepper spray shot in our direction.
About 24 people face down. And earlier we saw a couple of kids come up and start yelling profanities. I want to be very clear, that is not the message. What you're looking at right now is the message. Racial injustice, trying to change what the issues are, and they are doing it in a peaceful manner.
And we have live team coverage for you tonight. Denver 7's Addie Guajardo is hearing more from our mayor, who just sat down with Denver 7 in the last hour in reaction to all of this tonight. First, though, Denver 7's Gary Brode got out of control tonight, Gary.
Yeah, and as you can see behind me, we're looking at several streets blocked off around the Capitol as we speak. And just in the last 10 minutes or so, we've heard several explosions. And as we walked a little bit closer, we definitely started to feel some of that tear gas seep into the lungs. So they've certainly administered quite a few to try to disperse the crowd at this point. It's hard to believe that around 5 o'clock, this started as just a peaceful protest. But as they continue to march through downtown, the crowds grew bigger and more hostile. What was a small gathering on the steps of the Capitol building.
For as long as I can remember, as long as any black person can remember, we've loved this country, and the country hasn't loved us back.
Protesting the death of George Floyd and many other black men and women killed by police.
Black Lives Matter!
The protest moved through 16th Street Mall, chanting through the streets, gaining followers in the process. As the protesters made their way to Lodo,
I can't breathe!
I can't breathe!
they were met by Denver police and SWAT, eventually making their way onto I-25, shutting down traffic, and not just on the highway, but in several streets around downtown. Police firing what appears to be paintballs into the crowd, some getting hit.
They shot me, I think, with a rubber bullet. I played paintball. That wasn't a paintball.
Others, like this woman, caught in the crossfire.
I got trapped in here, and I'm trying to get through with my kids, and they're shooting at our car. I'm just trying to get home safely.
One man put in handcuffs. In back of the Capitol, protesters were roping off streets, keeping cars from going by. This woman driving through a crowd as the group hits her truck. One man even throwing his bike. Another situation where this black SUV nearly runs someone over. later in the night, gas administered to disperse the crowd. And as you can see, the crowd still, there's a little bit of crowd here and there throughout. We saw about an hour ago over down Colfax, more gas was administered. The crowd started to disperse there as well. But let's send it over right now to Addie Guajardo, who's in front of a police car right now that appears to be damaged. Addie.
Well, Gary, I'm wearing my mask right now because that tear gas has been going off and it has been potent, making us cry. We've seen it with the protesters as well. But like you said, this went from a peaceful protest to a violent one. And look at this right here. The state patrol car back window completely smashed out, and it doesn't end there. Let's go to the front of this patrol car where we're seeing the front of it. Just there's some kind of object that was taken to it, and it's not the only one. We go right across another patrol car, several parts over here. There's one behind us, but we've got 3 patrol cars that are damaged. Now let's go to the third car right here. It doesn't end. There's 4 that we saw that were damaged today. Front window completely smashed out. Now, while we were out here, we saw at least 4 protesters that were arrested. Then they were released. We spoke to one of those protesters that was arrested, and a lot of them very emotional. Listen to what they had to say.
I know it contains another black man being murdered.
Decades of pain, anger, stalled progress have once again led us back to this. A second round of protests tonight in Denver for the killing of George Floyd.
Today, the Minneapolis police officer seen with his knee on Floyd's neck was arrested and charged with murder. If history has taught demonstrators anything, it is not to expect a conviction.
And yet there has been singing between the chants today. White-hot rage tempered by the words of Sam Cooke. And a still unkept promise that one day African Americans will no longer live in fear of the people sworn to protect them.
Our team covering tonight's protests, as well as the damage done during Thursday's unrest. Denver 7's Russell Haythorne gets us started. Russell.
Yeah, Jessica, things have quieted down a little, but this is unfortunate. You can see the statue outside the west steps of the state capitol here has been defaced tonight. This is the 3rd time the protest has moved back to the state capitol after protesters marched throughout the city today. We have some video to show you of those marches. They started at the capitol at about noon today, and then over to the city county building, and then eventually up and down the 16th Street Mall before making their way back over to the state capitol. A second protest started at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. This is the 2nd straight day of protests and marches in Denver in honor of George Floyd. Protesters expressed anger, sadness, and frustration and shared why they are out here today.
Why? Because I'm a mother. Because I'm a mother. We're losing these boys. We're losing these people.
Worst case scenario, 8 p.m.
For what?
8 p.m. at the benches.
This is not love in action. We see families mourning, we see mothers mourning, and we're done with it. We're done dying. I'm done dying. I'm done being afraid of bringing nieces and nephews and sons and daughters into this world that aren't allowed to live the lives that they deserve to live.
Things did escalate. The tension between protesters and police escalated late this afternoon. At about 4 o'clock, we witnessed 3 arrests on Broadway and 1 over on 16th. But by and large, this has been a very peaceful day of protests here in Denver. You can see they are back on the west steps of the state capitol. This has been nothing like the violence and vandalism we saw last night. For more on what's happening today, my colleague Sloan Dickey is standing by live.
That's right, Russell, and we're seeing over here, there's more people coming to the west steps of the Capitol building, but you're right, it is generally peaceful, and I think that has a lot to do with the message of the organizers early on today. They said that the protest should be of unity and frustration, peaceful frustration, that is. That message resonated with bystanders we spoke with earlier today, the frustration of another police-involved killing. However, as the day went on, those tensions did increase.
Tensions increasing this afternoon as protesters regathered near the Capitol. Earlier, a planned protest drew hundreds to the 16th Street Mall. Bystanders cheering on the marchers.
I think out of that sadness comes so much anger over nothing being done.
And I think that's where this comes from.
Anger, but not violence.
I think they want to be heard. I think they want to know that they stood up for something they believed in.
Organizers for the earlier protest saying they understand the frustration.
And we're going to chant to the mayor.
But now is not the time for violence. Those watching the protest agree.
I think America, we need to get it together. We need to quit the violence.
Saying when it comes to the death of George Floyd, what they see as another death of a black man by a white officer.
As a black man, I've been in that seat. I've been picked on by the police.
Enough is enough.
But we got to come together.
Come together to end a terrible trend in police violence.
Now, if you were a bystander at an earlier protest, you might have seen something a little bit different than you do now. Of course, we're seeing vandalism of the statue on the west side of the Capitol building. Although the tensions are higher, they have remained peaceful throughout the day. This remains a peaceful protest as of tonight, right now. Reporting live in front of the Capitol building, Sloan Dickey, Denver 7.
Sloan, thank you. Denver police searching tonight for the driver who appeared to intentionally hit a protester with her car. Officers want to speak with the victim as well to make sure he's doing okay. Meanwhile, police are defending their use of tear gas during last night's much more unruly demonstration. Officers insist the riot gear only came on after protesters crossed the line into violence. Denver 7's Lance Hernandez on that tonight. Lance.
Well, there were gunshots fired at the state capitol tonight, or last night, that is. You can see crowds gathered on the west steps over there in the background right now. Some protesters tell me those gunshots were fired at them. Police still don't know who fired them, but they know that rocks were thrown at police, so they donned their riot gear and moved in to disperse the unruly crowds. Now, this morning, Denver's mayor, Michael Hancock, and police chief Paul Pazin say there were a few among the crowd that hijacked the protest for their own purposes. They caused damage and put other lives at risk. The mayor said their decision to move out onto I-25 and to stop traffic was a prime example.
We will hold people accountable if they look to hijack people's pain for their own violent purposes. Yesterday started out as a peaceful demonstration that was infiltrated by others who decided to push their own agenda, to disrupt, and to incite.
Now, 13 people were arrested in connection with last night's violent protest. The mayor says he's glad to see that people are concerned enough about what happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd, but he says that the violence detracts from that message, so he wants the protests to remain peaceful. Lance Hernandez, Denver 7.
Lance, thank you very much. And several businesses on the 16th Street Mall now cleaning up from last night's chaos. Soul Street Shoes was looted twice. Meanwhile, stores weren't the only ones taking damage. Senate President Leroy Garcia's truck took a pretty good beating. Denver 7's Megan Lopez spoke with Senator this evening. Megan?
Yeah, not only was Senate President Leroy Garcia's car damaged in that protest yesterday, but so were 2 Capitol police cars and the Capitol itself. It had a couple of windows that were smashed in and graffiti on it. That graffiti was cleaned up today. But in anticipation of today's protest, the legislature actually called off its session today and tomorrow during a time when they're having very important budget talks. Still, a couple of lawmakers talked to me today about the importance of this movement. On a day when state lawmakers were planning on debating a budget, once again their work was brought to an abrupt halt. Capitol Police locked up the building, boarded up the windows, and prepared for a protest after this. A rally against police brutality turned violent Thursday. Senate President Leroy Garcia's truck was caught in the chaos.
I was still working and I was informed of the protest.
The truck, which he just paid off, had smashed windows and slashed tires. He was escorted out when things started to escalate.
They were able to safely remove me from the tunnel system.
And while he doesn't condone the violence, he understands the anger.
The fact that communities are losing trust with their law enforcement, integrity is being lost.
Friday's protest, led by DPS school board member Tay Anderson.
Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner, Mike Brown, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, George Floyd could have been me. That's why I'm here.
The march started as a peaceful contrast to less than 24 hours before.
We want to see police officers being held accountable and also being held accountable for the murders of unarmed black men.
Now, there was a bill that was in the very early stages of being talked about that might have added a statewide independent monitoring program for police agencies across the state, but it hadn't even been introduced yet when the coronavirus came to Colorado and shut down the state legislature. So it's really not clear at this point, with so little time and so much on their plates, if really anything is going to be introduced at this point. I'm live at the Colorado State Capitol. Megan Lopez, number 7.
Megan, we appreciate that report tonight. Thank you very much. And we're going to continue to follow these demonstrations throughout the night, however which way they go. We'll have it for you on air, on our website, and on social media. And unless you are protesting, maybe keep your distance from downtown this evening.
We have seen enough.
Hands up! Hands up!
We are not going to wait for these incidents to escalate any further, or God forbid someone loses their life before we take action.
All right, tonight, more tear gas and dozens of protesters still out right now. Even pepper balls being shot at our reporters. What was a peaceful day of protests has now turned chaotic once again. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at 10 for this 4th night of protests in downtown Denver after the killing of George Floyd. I'm Jacqueline Allen.
And I'm Jason Grenauer. The curfew is in place for Denver right now. It has been since 8 o'clock, and that does not expire until the morning. But that's not stopping those who are confronting police. Our crews are across downtown Denver right now doing their best to stay safe.
But first, I want to get to Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin, who is joining us right now live over the phone. And Chief, we have been watching this escalate really over the last 2 hours. In contrast to last night, you let this go on for a while after curfew before police moved in, but they are moving in fast and hard right now.
Certainly, Jacqueline, we want to talk about...
Well, Jason, it's pretty much been this group of protesters that we've seen this afternoon that have stuck together and going around. Right now, we're behind the city and county building of Denver. That big group is stuck here on the corner of 14th and Cherokee.
That trash can still on fire over there. It's a dumpster, as a matter of fact. And right now on the state capitol, there were still some protesters. I saw police coming down, pepper spraying them. I want you to take a look behind us. You see more tear gas. Police are pushing back the protesters. Earlier, we're moving backwards right now. You know, we spoke to the police earlier.
Yesterday, the strategy was to push outwards from that Center Street station and then push even further out from the Capitol building. Now it seems that Colfax has become that stronghold. They have the police precinct as their kind of center stronghold, and they're pushing out from there, dispersing the crowds.
That's at that large group of protesters on the corner over there. We're going to keep moving it back a little bit. We're keeping an eye on what's going on, but it seems like they're holding their line where they are. They're just trying to get the crowd to disperse back.
We have been covering this all night tonight. It is our job as journalists to shine a light on what is going on for the protesters and for the police, and to keep the people informed about what is going on in our city. And I hope we have done that tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, for following this and watching what is going on in the place that we love.
Stay home, stay safe, and take care of each other. Thank you for joining us. Good night.